Today, let us examine how Rubrik CDM is different from traditional backup solutions. So what we have here is a representation of a traditional backup infrastructure. It is a layered architecture. The first layer, the layer number 1, is the command and control system. This system is responsible for scheduling backups and managing catalog. The problem with this layer is it is a single point of failure. If this system goes down, the entire environment is going to go down. And secondly, you have to over-provision the hardware resources and storage resources needed for the system. If you're going to change this between 1 to 2, 3 years, it's going to be very expensive and painful. The layer number 3 is your data mover layer, where you have data movers connected to dedicated storage systems. The problem here is these creates islands of storage. There is no global data reduction across. There is no storage optimization across this layer. And secondly, they themselves are single points of failure for the clients being protected by those data movers. Now, the third layer in a traditional architecture is the agents. So agents have 2 problems. Number 1, the agents are really thick and they tend to take up all the resources in production. So you have to carefully schedule your backups in such a way that they don't interfere with production. Second, these agents are very complex to maintain. If you have thousands of systems to protect, you end up installing, managing, and updating those components individually. So there's a management problem as well. Now, these 3 are the essential components in a traditional backup system, but there is also a layer 0 which tends to add more value to the system. So the examples are monitoring systems, reporting systems, and indexing systems. So these systems are needed on top of all this infrastructure to make sure that you get more value out of your data that is being protected. There have been some incremental innovations in the market. For example, since this is a very complex architecture, there have been some vendors who have fused the compute and storage together to create what they call an integrated backup appliance. There have been few other vendors who have fused all the secondary storage systems to create hyperconverged secondary storage systems. So those are infrastructure-centric innovations to simplify the deployment, but still the overall management complexity remains even with those changes. So what happens with Rubrik? So when you take Rubrik into account, we are collapsing all these layers into a flat architecture. So now what you have is a software-defined solution. So Rubrik does not use any hardware innovations to improve its architecture. Secondly, Rubrik is cloud native. It is designed to work in such a way that it uses only the resources that it really needs. It is the right fit for metered environments. And lastly, Rubrik is scale out. So when you need to expand your capacity of performance, you simply add more nodes. So if you look at Rubrik architecture, you start with a minimum of 3 nodes. And with those, you have all these functions built into these nodes. All these nodes are autonomous, so there is no single point of failure like you see in the traditional architecture. And all these nodes have scale-out storage and scale-out compute, so there is no islands of storage that happens in the traditional environment. And all these nodes are API-driven to talk to production applications, and they examine the production load footprint, and it is able to throttle things down. And hence, it reduces the complexity in the traditional agent-based design. So Rubrik, in a nutshell, it's software-defined, cloud-native, and scale-out.